Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, the effects of the Anthropocene, the ongoing Anthropocene destruction of the biosphere, et cetera, all very, very doomy and dire stuff indeed. Once again, you know, I welcome dissenting voices. I welcome, you know, I don't necessarily turn away deniers and doubters. I'm up for debate. I'm also up for not, you know, if you start your comment with, you guys are morons and you don't know, you're brainwashed. You know, if you're just spewing junk, like, you're not going to get very far. And in fact, I'm going to just block you and I'm going to delete you. So rules of engagement: if you want to debate or discuss something on this channel, if you have a differing opinion, the way to do that is to cordially disagree, or, you know, say something. You know, there are people that come on this channel that have differing opinions, and they don't, you know, they don't engage in the name calling and the harassment. Just, you know, they don't engage in the, you know, I'm superior to you, and, you know, you're just the assumption that everybody else on this channel is a dumbass, whatever. To just keep this very short. If you treat people respectfully and you engage in discussion, you actually will find many people on this channel willing to discuss many things. And that's what I love about the comments and the comment section of this channel. This channel really isn't anything without the comment section, without the, it's, you know, I am doing these videos on climate change, but there, you know, the comment section is a discussion board, and we all have lots of things to discuss, and we have differing opinions, and you are welcome to offer your differing opinion, but just please do it respectfully. It just, nothing boils my blood like somebody just coming on and spewing, like, you know, you brainwashed morons. Like, yo, you're gonna get the same from me and worse, and probably from other people as well. And good luck to you if that's your approach. Clearly, you never learned anything about having, you know, a cordial or open discussion. But you know, that's the problem with the internet, is that it's a cloak, it's a veil for people to just, you know, lose all social graces and all connection to, you know, having some kind of like cordial discussion. The gloves are off. Everybody's a savage, and, you know, everybody's just super brave and can say whatever they want. And I don't know, it tends to just make everything really kind of nasty and brutish and brutal, when actually people really aren't that way in real life. If you put all the people in a room together physically, there is no way the same discussions would be happening. So think about that. Think about what you would say to somebody if they were right in front of you, actually physically. Would you come at them the same way? And you definitely wouldn't. you absolutely wouldn't, because you wouldn't want the consequences, and just wouldn't go down like that. So try to remember that there's real people on the other side of the screen. So again, once again, there is just too much to cover. I had probably 4 different videos in mind to do today, this morning, and my day was just chock full of other things to do, and here I am at night, and I have time for 1 video, which means I'm going to cover this 1 article from Darja Mail that just came out, Truth Out today. That being said, I'm going to try and get to all those other videos. If I could do 3, 4, 5 videos a day, I totally would. I just, you know, that would entail me, you know, spending a really good part of my day doing videos. And I just don't have that kind of time. I wish I did. So this article is titled, "In the Face of Extinction, We Have a Moral Obligation." Try to also remember, please, doubters and deniers and trolley types. Uh, I'm reading from articles from all over the world and all over the internet, from many different places, and all these people aren't just making this up. A lot of the people are echoing. I'm echoing the things that basically I'm reading in these articles. I'm not making this up. I'm not like just trying to be like scary. I'm scared because of what these articles are saying, and I'm trying to relay that emotion to you so that I could possibly convey some kind of some kind of spark, some kind of inspiration, some kind of realization that we are in big trouble, and possibly some kind of united action might be required instead of just debating about stuff on YouTube, which is actually kind of a waste of time. Researching and writing about the impacts of runaway climate change, as I've been doing now for too many years, I've watched several patterns recur. One of these is evident in a recent warning from the UN. Biodiversity chief of the UN, Christiana Pasca Palmer, warned that if governments around the globe don't work to bring a halt to the loss of biodiversity and succeed in implementing a plan to do so within 2 years, humans could face our own extinction. Okay, so listen, this has nothing to do with climate change, with the mechanism of warming. This has to do with biodiversity loss, the loss of species, the loss of insects, the loss of fish, the loss of mammals, the loss of all types of flora and fauna. This is having an impact, a very, very big impact. You can argue all day long about ice age or solar minimums, or CO2 or whatever the hell you want, but even if we could go round and round and argue on that, but what you're not going to do is argue away the fact that we are losing plants and animals and species. But it doesn't really matter, because you all just make up your own facts anyways. To get back to this article, the loss of biodiversity and succeed in implementing a plan to do so within 2 years, humans could face our own extinction. Palmer said, according to The Guardian, people in all countries need to put pressure on their governments to draw up ambitious global targets by 2020 to protect the insects, birds, plants, and mammals that are vital for global food production, clean water, and carbon sequestration. People in all countries are already working to pressure their governments to do just that. Yet, with few possible exceptions, we know all too well how wedded most governments are to the current power structure and the economics that drive it to believe radical policy change like this will actually occur without overthrowing said governments. And then the pattern will repeat. After some time passes and things are even worse, another dire warning or results of a study that serves as one is released, and again, nothing will change. As cynical as this is, anyone paying attention over time can see this pattern. Thus, we shall continue to watch these milestones as they pass by, then brace ourselves for what is to come. Personally, I have instead surrendered and accepted the inevitability of our situation, that we will live the rest of our time, however long each of us might have left, on an irrevocably changed planet, while the sixth mass extinction event continues apace. We will daily walk further into that frontier. And this does go for the powers that be as well. If you are not telling people what's going on, or if you are actively engaging in the continuation of business as usual, knowing damn well that it's destroying the biosphere, if you are a cog in this machine, if you are a willing cog in this machine, at some point you need to take responsibility for being a cog in this machine. And at some point, you're going to have a lot of angry people up in your face. You're going to have a lot of angry people willing to take out the people that have caused this. They're going to find those responsible, and they are going to do what they need to do. They're going to exact their justice on you. So um, word to those that need to hear this. You don't have a long time. You can either get on the climate change train. You can either realize that this is happening and be on the side be on the right side of history, or you can be on the wrong side of a very angry mob of people. And you're all going to go down anyways. It doesn't really matter. I mean, we can all just argue about this and let this run its course, and everybody's going to really be in a very difficult place eventually. But damn it, seriously, damn it. It's time for people to wake up. And if you're not going to actively help and do something about this, you're in the way. At the same time, never have I felt as morally obliged as I do today to live my life as close to my beliefs as possible. I'm obliged to work to serve and care for the planet with as much assiduity, tenacity, and devotion as I am capable of. In fact, each time I read about the dire results of yet another human-caused climate geosphere disruption study, it is an opportunity to recommit to my beliefs. At least for today, this is how I do this work in a way that is personally sustainable. Tomorrow, assuming I'm still here, I might need a completely different approach. If you haven't yet, I encourage you to consider what your approach could be as you take in each one of these reports below. Each one is a body blow humans have inflicted upon the earth. To begin, a recently published study has shown that ocean acidification has already ignited a dangerous feedback loop that is literally dissolving the seafloor. Motherboard's explanation of the study is worth quoting in full, as this is a critical feedback loop we all must be aware of. Calcium carbonate, or calcite, lines the ocean floor. When calcite combines with carbon dioxide and water, the reaction produces calcium ions and biocarbonate ions. Because of this, the surrounding water becomes less acidic over long periods of time, think tens of thousands of years. But when you throw more carbon dioxide into the equation, all of the seafloor calcite starts to get used up to power these reactions in extremely large amounts, meaning that the ocean floor is dissolving. Now, there's not enough calcite, but more carbon dioxide than ever, driving up acidity levels. Foundational species in the marine food chain, such as coral, are fine-tuned to thrive within a very particular range of pH levels. When those levels change for a long period of time, these species, as well as the fish, bacteria, mollusks, and ocean life that depends on them, simply can't survive. The last time the oceans were as acidic as they are now, 96% of ocean life was extinct. Another study published in mid-November revealed how the climate policies of China, Russia, and Canada alone will, if left unchanged, bring Earth above catastrophic 5 degrees Celsius warming in less than 85 years. The recently released U.S. National Climate Assessment stated unequivocally that human-caused climate change will inflict substantial damages to the economy, environment, and human health over the coming decades. In many ways, it restates the obvious. Climate change is already harming the lives of people in the U.S. via disastrous wildfires in the West, soil loss in the Midwest, coastal erosion in Alaska, and East Coast flooding, as did the aforementioned study. A previous climate assessment chapter stated, without major reductions, annual average global temperatures could increase by 9 Fahrenheit or 5 C or more by the end of the century. 4C is extinction point, and end of the century is way too far away. Earth climate change driven changes across this realm are becoming more dramatic with each passing month. A recently published study showed that due to increasingly warmer temperatures, climate change has become an escalator to extinction. For mountain birds, warmer temperatures are wiping out bird species that were already living atop mountains for cooler climate. Another recent study showed that climate change is essentially functioning to sterilize male insects. This grave damage to male insect reproductive systems under increasingly powerful heat waves could already be contributing to declines in biodiversity around much of the world. Habitat loss for wildlife, according to the recent UN conference, is a threat to all of our futures. Biodiversity experts in attendance warn that the mass extinction of the planet's wildlife is now as big of a danger as climate change itself. The World Wildlife Fund recently published its annual Living Planet report, which showed how, since just 1970, humans have annihilated 60% of Earth's mammals, birds, fish, and reptiles. A very important recently published article by Yale Environment 360 showed how Earth's climate zones are literally shifting due to climate change. This is bringing about food and water scarcity and resulting in mostly negative consequences for local economies and public health. Some of the highlights of the article: the tropics are expanding by 30 miles each decade. The Sahara Desert has gotten 10% larger since 1920, and the 100th meridian in the US, the line where the arid western plains of North America meet the wetter eastern region, has shifted 140 miles to the east. On that note, a government scientist in Canada is sounding the alarm about what is happening to forests in this country, speaking to the fact that vast areas of Canadian forests are dying out. Canadian Forest Service research scientist Barry Cook told the CBC, "We see these compelling images of trees dying over large areas, and it's fairly frightening. The trees, which are dying off, are also a critical source of Canada's biodiversity." Wow, vast areas of Canadian forests are dying out. Meanwhile, a shocking new study showed that the Congo Basin rainforest, the second largest rainforest on Earth, may be gone by the end of the century given current rates of deforestation. The study does not take into account climate change impacts like drought, wildfires, and insect infestations that, of course, speed this up dramatically. We are all acutely aware of the growing number of people from Central America heading toward the southern US border. But what is usually not reported by the corporate media is the vast percentage of these migrants, particularly those from Guatemala, are migrating due to climate change impacts like drought and shifting weather patterns, which are making life ever more difficult for small-scale farmers there. This fall, a major hurricane in Hawaii literally erased a small island from the map. Along with that disappearance came the loss of a critical breeding ground for monk seals, turtles, and birds. And what is truly a sign of the times, increasing numbers of last chance tourists are flocking to sites before they vanish. I don't know if y'all remember me talking about the guy I met that wanted to climb Kilimanjaro, or before the glacier there vanished. A recent article about this last chance tourism, the phenomenon of people wanting to see places that are already irrevocably changed by climate change or that will likely soon go away entirely, is rather disturbing. Some of the places attracting these last chance tourists are the Florida Reef Tract and Glacier National Park in Montana. To close this section on a slightly heartening note, it is good to see more and more books and articles that are addressing the need to grieve all of the mounting loss. Water, the now infamous Pacific blob, a vast patch of warm water that caused massive die-offs of marine life a few years ago, was just a precursor to what could become a pattern. Another mass of warm water has formed off the coast of Canada's British Columbia, where warmer than normal ocean water is already covering about 2,000 square kilometers of area. Despite Oregon being in the normally rainy Pacific Northwest, record heat and low snowfall have caused a declaration of emergency in almost 1/3 of the counties of the state. Amazingly, 86% of the state is also in severe drought. A dramatic indication of the rapidly diminishing cryosphere, a large glacier in China that draws millions of tourists annually, is melting away before our eyes. The Bashui Glacier at 15,000 feet is part of a massive blanket of ice in Central Asia, referred to as the third pole. Given that is the third largest store of ice on this planet, behind Greenland and the Antarctic, the area of ice roughly the size of New Mexico and Texas combined is vital as a water source for billions of people in Asia, and the 10 largest rivers in Asia rely heavily on its seasonal melting. In fact, it is one of the largest sources of fresh water on Earth, and it is in trouble. Scientists working in China found that by 2015, 82% of the glaciers that surveyed in China had retreated. A study published this year showed that the Baishui had lost 60% of its mass and shrunk 820 feet since just 1982. China has always had a freshwater supply problem with 20% of the world's population, but only 7% of its freshwater. And I just read somewhere that China is getting ready to embark on a huge geoengineering program. They're trying to basically figure out how to suck water out of the sky, and they're already doing it. Over major cities, major areas. They are trying to suck atmospheric moisture, whatever they can, out of the sky, and they're succeeding right now, but who knows what kind of impact that's going to have in the future. Joanna Nyman, an energy security lecturer at the University of Sheffield, told phys.org, that's heightened the impact by the impact of climate change. Scientists have also warned of a coming water crisis due to the melting glaciers in China. They expect it to begin around 2060. Meanwhile, sea ice and glaciers in other parts of the world are not faring any better. The Arctic sea ice is now thin enough that Russia is softening its regulations for the kind of vessels it allows to operate within its northern sea route for shipping across the Arctic. In Canada's Yukon territory, glaciers are now retreating much faster than previously believed and bringing dramatic changes across the region. And in the recent State of the Mountains report, published earlier in the summer, the Canadian Alpine Club found that the St. Elias Mountains, which span British Columbia, the Yukon, and Alaska, are losing ice faster than the rest of the country. Read a story in The Guardian about the melting glaciers. Previous research found that between 1957 and 2007, the range lost 22% of its ice cover, enough to raise global sea levels by 1.1 millimeters. When I first went to the St. Elias Range, it felt like time travel into the past. David Hick, who co-edited the report, told The Guardian, what we're seeing now feels like time travel into the future because as the massive glaciers are retreating, they're causing a complete reorganization of the environment. Then there are the ever-rising seas. Recently, 3/4 of Venice was flooded by an exceptionally high tide, which was augmented by strong winds. It was the worst flooding to inundate the city in a decade, and untold numbers of homes, commercial buildings, and businesses flooded. We will, of course, see more of this colossal flooding in the not so distant future for all coastal cities around the globe. One factor that causes the oceans to rise is the expansion of ocean waters as they warm. With that warming comes other problems. For example, Australia's Great Barrier Reef has received another dire warning. The entire system is at risk from bleaching and more coral death. The U.S. National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration forecast a 60% chance that the entire Great Barrier Reef will reach alert level 1, meaning the extreme heat, stress, and bleaching are likely. 2016 and 2017 both saw heat waves that decimated large swaths of the reef. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's recent report warned that even with just 1.5 C warming, Earth is currently at 1.1 C, the planet will lose 80% of its coral reefs. At 2 C, they would all be destroyed. Fire. California isn't the only place experiencing increasingly intense and devastating wildfires. A wildfire in George, South Africa, killed 7 people, including a fire. Excuse me. Excuse me. Yeah, suddenly overcome for a second. Wildfire in George, South Africa, killed 7 people, including a firefighter, as fires in the region are worsening due to the ongoing drought and increasingly warmer temperatures. Brush fires following an intense heat wave across parts of Queensland, Australia, described as highly unusual for this time of year, have destroyed homes and forced evacuations. Normally in Queensland, this time of year is the wet season. In this part of the world, we have not experienced these conditions before. Queensland Fire and Emergency Services Commissioner Katarina Carroll told the BBC, it is unprecedented. Meanwhile, it's not news that California being warmer and drier than it used to be is causing more and increasingly destructive wildfires as climate change progresses. Another report, this one from National Geographic, outlined how the state's hottest and driest summers have all occurred in the last 20 years, along with the fact that 15 of the 20 largest wildfires in the state's history have occurred just since 2000. Additionally, 10 of the top 20 most destructive California wildfires have occurred since just 2010. Underscoring these trends, another report showed that California's Camp Fire, which killed scores of people and displaced more than 100,000, caused greater devastation than the 10 other most destructive California wildfires combined. Air. According to a recent study published by in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, climate change is likely the cause of tropical cyclones now being pushed toward the poles. This means they are becoming increasingly destructive at the northern latitudes. This is due to the fact that climate change is actually causing the tropics to expand. There's warming sea surface temperatures, and these conditions are causing cyclones to form further northward. A November report by Yale Environment 360 showed that Arctic warming, which is happening twice as quickly as the warming of the rest of the globe, has allowed new species to spread northwards, which are bringing new diseases with them that are having an increasingly devastating impact on the region's fragile ecosystems. denial and reality, the rhetoric of climate denial is shifting, according to a recent report by Vox. The Republican Party becoming aware that, given the regularity of catastrophic climate events that is now undeniably upon us, engaging in ongoing denial of climate change makes them look bad, has shifted its wording again. Rather than denying outright the reality of climate change, some Republicans are now increasingly challenging the idea that it's human caused. Yes, the new one. All these other things are happening, but humans, no way. While of course continuing to do the bidding of its fossil fuel funders, the rhetoric may have shifted, but in a sense it doesn't matter. Republicans are still working against any policy changes that might threaten the profits of big oil. In one of the most blatant acts of denial possible, while commenting on the release of the aforementioned alarming U.S. climate change report, President Donald Trump said, "I don't believe it." Yeah, that's like saying, "I don't believe 2 + 2 makes 4. Okay? You don't get to choose whether to believe or not believe science. Back in reality land, Energy and Environment News published an important story outlining how every single U.S. president from JFK on was warned about the dangers of climate change. Meanwhile, New York State's Attorney General has sued ExxonMobil, accusing it of deceiving its shareholders by downplaying the risks of climate change. Wow. We must brace ourselves for a truly dystopian climate future that is inevitable. A very important report by ION shows us that we're not just facing a new normal of climate extremes and the catastrophes that accompany them. In effect, we are entering a new Cretaceous period. Last November, this COP23 UN climate change conference in Bonn reported that warming by 3C by 2100 is now the realistic expectation, reads the report, and that is extremely conservative, like by miles. With no check on emissions, we are on course to see pre-industrial levels of CO2 double from 280 to 560 parts per million or parts per million by 2050, then again double again by 2100. Oof. In short, we'll be generating climate conditions last experienced during the Cretaceous period, when CO2 levels reached over 1,000 parts per million. It is worth noting that during the Cretaceous period, global temperatures were 3 to 10 C hotter than pre-industrial temperatures, and we are currently at 1.1 C above pre-industrial temperatures. A final reality check for us all. The World Meteorological Organization recently reported that concentrations of key greenhouse gases in the atmosphere that are driving up global temperatures set a record in 2017. There is no sign of a reversal to this trend on the horizon. According to the WMO report, the last time Earth experienced a similar concentration of CO2 was 3 to 5 million years ago, when global temperatures were 2 to 3 C warmer than today. Sea levels were 10 to 20 meters higher than they are right now. CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere are 46% higher today than they were before the Industrial Revolution began. Concurrently, methane, which is a far more potent greenhouse gas than CO2, is now present in the atmosphere at 257% of its level before the Industrial Revolution, and its rate of increase has been constant over the last decade. The catastrophic impacts of runaway climate change are already upon us. We must all consider how to use our time and energies most wisely and carefully, and we face down the most monumental test our species has experienced. Another excellent article from Dar Jamil. Listen, there's, the rate at which things are changing is the thing that makes what we're doing and what is happening so catastrophic. If this really were going to, change slowly over centuries, that would be one thing. If this were the difference between 3 and 4 C rise by 2035 and 3 and 4 C rise by 2100, that doesn't really actually put us in a position to stop what's happening. A slower rate of change, a slightly slower rate of change might allow us time to possibly adapt, possibly mitigate. But the thing is the longer we wait, the longer we spend in this, ridiculous debate, the longer, the denialists and the industrialists control the narrative, the more we ensure that we are not going to make it. And we can kid glove the denialists and the industrialists, all day long. We can talk about debating, or seeing the other side, or having different opinions be okay or whatever. But what we're actually really talking about is having science just be the driver for this, and having that science not be encumbered by the powers that be that want to deny that science, that want to, that's the thing that is ridiculous to me, is that the denialists and the doubters and the debaters think that they're somehow, they've got the goods on the globalists and they know what's really going on, and they don't realize that the globalists are the ones that are trying to keep this knowledge away from people, because they want you to think that you can just continue doing what you're doing. They don't want to scare the children being the adults. They don't want to admit that we're in big trouble, because it means the end of their paradigm and their comfort level, most likely. It means the end of everybody's comfort level, and nobody really wants to talk about that. Everybody wants to just keep on doing what we're doing and partying like we're partying, and and that there's no end to this wonderful path to the future that we might or might not be on. But I really urge you to embrace this knowledge and embrace the science, and try to embrace some answers instead of wasting everyone's time on this ridiculous, there's no debate. This is settled science. Excuse me, that's all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.